Check, is my voice in? Suara saya masuk? Oke. So we have shared this email. It's fine. The line, yeah, you can use it, yes. Audionya harus di ini enggak, Prof Reiner? Di Zoom-nya atau di mute aja?
Kalau saya mute ini.
Di situ di mute?
Iya.
Oh.
Masih belum.
Is it detected? Oh, I see.
What happens because it worked quite well the other day.
Yeah. Will you be able to detect this place? Maybe the resolution is too high.
Gimana dong? Kameranya udah aku tadi nggak bisa masuk. Kenapa? Nggak bisa masuk. Kameranya.
The only thing I can do is I can restart. It will take a minute or two.
Or we could try using my laptop if you want.
Kamu harus itu ya?
I mean, either way will take a while. What can they do?
biar nggak kena kepalanya Mbak ini.
Ini kena kepala.
Iya.
Kalau di zoom out ya. Tuh.
Oh, ini mau taruh tengah aja kameranya.
Iya, tapi tadi nggak bisa narik ini lenjanya.
Yang itu nggak bisa, udah pakem begitu.
Nggak tahu deh. Itu emang nggak bisa ditarik. Nggak bisa.
Bisa.
Kalau nggak, Mbak. Mbak.
Ini udah center kan?
Mau ini nggak?
Center.
Ininya di tapi nggak bisa. Mana suruh Mbak? Di inframe.
Ini udah center semua. Coba lihat dari mana? Lihat dulu.
Should I restart?
Maybe kita try to do this.
Bisa diloncatin ke tengah.
Kabelnya nyampe.
Iya. Iya. Boleh.
Bisa ambil posisi ini.
Bisa, berarti ini saya bisa.
I can try to restart.
Or maybe it doesn't work, it could be good. It doesn't work. Ini dia.
Yeah, I have to do that. Okay. Yeah, we can try. Sure. Yeah.
Send the file.
Can send you the file, yes. Which email address? Oh, maybe it's
Oh,
I can do that.
Coba dibuka gambarnya kayak gini.
Oh, ada.
Kayak miring ya?
Nonton video lagi.
Mantap sih.
I hope so.
Nggak apa-apa buat peserta nanti
Take a
kalau
while
kanan
because
posisi.
it's almost technical, right?
Iya, kayak miring ya?
Or you can this.
Yeah.
Nggak bisa dikeluarin gridnya sih.
Hah?
Stabilizernya nggak bisa.
Nggak bisa. Aku selinder Mbak. Menurutku sih lurus-lurus aja ya.
Udah. Iya itu miring.
Bluri. Suara apa sih? Kualitas kameranya bagus.
Zoom-nya cuma 300 ya?
Iya.
Udah penuh ya?
Lihat totalnya di mana sih?
Ini nih, atasnya.
Oh iya.
Iya.
Berarti.
Paling YouTube.
Banyak yang nggak bisa. Link YouTube ini.
Link YouTube-nya. Tak.
Di Jakarta juga.
Iya,
Ya, Jakarta.
dicek di YouTube ya.
No, it's
Let me join the Zoom.
Profesornya mana ya? Bisa login Zoom?
Bisa apa?
Profesornya bisa login Zoom? Mau aku jadi host?
Oh, siapa? Ya, itu wide ya.
with you.
Mau diborong terus. Mesti ada yang di remote. Ada. Kenapa?
Dia dulu 300 berapa itu? Dari Samsung.
Masih ada di remote ini berarti?
Hah? Kenapa?
Masih ada yang di remote. Boleh ada yang berkorban dua nggak? Buat Pak Adila sama ini.
Apa lagi?
Enggak, profesornya kan mau join. Ininya udah full 300.
Terus gimana dong?
Harus ada yang berkorban dua nih.
Kita bisa gak ngerti? Bisa. Profesornya belum join. Dan dari tadi dia duluan masuk ya. Kan tadi udah dikasih link nih.
Bisa join.
Dia keluarin aja dah.
Yang mana?
Siapa aja lah.
Kasih link YouTube-nya di Zoom. Jadi kalau ada yang keluar, ini aja link YouTube-nya kasih di Zoom. Link YouTube tuh kalau ada
Bisa
yang
masuk Kak di sini.
Iya, bentar
Saya.
Pak. Harus ada di yang di remove.
Bentar, Pak.
Ya. Kalau saya.
Share aja, tinggal share kan. Nah, get shareable link. Terus langsung remove aja, asal remove.
Zoom-nya udah penuh sih.
Udah ada Zoom, udah lempar aja. Itu aja mahasiswa lempar apa lagi?
Mungkin yang Prof Reiner bisa di drop dulu.
Masuk Pak.
Bisa.
Masuk 2 atau 3, jangan 1, 2 atau 3.
Udah random aja yang masuk.
2 atau 3. Terus 5 kalau perlu. Ini soalnya begitu ini yang di apa?
Oh iya.
Yang
iya.
ini langsung masuk.
Yang admitnya langsung ini ya.
Coba dimatiin dulu waiting room-nya. Waiting room-nya nyalain.
Cek 1 2 3.
Waiting room, enable waiting room.
Suara masuk ya.
Udah. Padahal tuh masuk. Dah, sip. Terus profesornya? Hah? Profesornya
Ya, kayaknya udah
keluarin
muncul.
lagi. Kurang ya, Profesornya
Pak?
masuk. Nah, ini Pak. Oh, kalau udah join. Terus? Nggak ada waiting room kan? Nggak ada kan? Biarin aja ini lagi. Profnya mau masuk?
Udah? Ini udah muncul?
Udah muncul belum ini di layar?
Sudah.
Okay.
Di YouTube?
Great. So, I guess let's get started then. I apologize for the technical issues that we have at the beginning. First, I would like to welcome everybody. My name is Adila Krishnadi, for those who never met me before. And today I will be moderating this session. We are very happy with the visit of Professor Reiner Hähnle. He is a strong, very close collaborator with our Faculty of Computer Science, and of course, with this visit this week, so he has we have an opportunity to hear from him some tips on writing for scientific papers. I think so this is not a technical research talk, I would say.
So for those of you whose field is not in software engineering, that will be fine as well. So, and we have like many guests attending this meeting offline, as well as like I see more than 100 people in Zoom and maybe more in YouTube channel. So I guess we have an excellent day, and I'll leave it to Prof to start the.
Thank you very much, Adila, for the warm welcome. You can understand me well, also on Zoom. Okay, so hello everybody out there in cyberspace, and It would be good if I could see my slides on this laptop.
Oh,
so
okay. So let me.
so just don't have to look back all the time.
Yeah, hold on a second. So let me just make a duplicate then.
Oh, I hope I didn't destroy it. I hope I didn't break it.
Hold on.
Otherwise it will, if it's not possible, I mean it.
No, I think it's possible. It's just that you need your time. Set this up.
Pak belum di mute dia.
And then
Dia ini ya. Mirror ya. Mirror.
something's here. So this, and then here, take this slide. Let me do the sharing to be sure. So, all right. The resolution looks a bit weird.
Manggilnya lama ya, jadinya tuh kayak belum.
No.
Nitip screenshot nanti ya. Yang daring. Satu dua aja maksudnya. Nanti ini bakal diekspor ya?
Ekspor apa? Mau direkam. Bisa sih nih, recording
Well,
nih.
it's good, it's good.
Oh, di YouTube aja. Kan
Oh
ada
iya,
sih
iya.
di YouTube.
Masih rekam ya?
If it's too much effort, I mean the gestures are will somehow manage.
Yang ini ya? Yeah, it's the same. So, okay. So I guess
Delay ya,
let's
ada
get
suara
let's
orang
get
ngomong
started.
ya. Oh, iya.
Try that once, and then we'll go ahead.
must have a beginning, middle, and ending. And now you think, how trivial is that? But, I mean, basically, every couple of weeks, I get an essay or a thesis from a student. It is definitely not sticking to this advice. Yeah? Usually, you have some middle, and stop. So, there is no proper beginning, and there is no good middle part, and there is no proper ending. This is the basic thing you have to keep in mind, yeah? Beginning, middle, ending. The second is, the most important element in any story is plot. So, even a scientific paper must have a plot. There must be a story to tell, yeah? You cannot just string together a set of definitions and a set of theorems, yeah, without any explanation. Nobody will be interested in that. Okay, well, maybe you will be interested in yourself, okay? Maybe your student has to be interested, but I think you have to engage the reader a little bit more. So before we start properly, let me tell, of course, in the end, everybody has to find his or her personal style. Yeah? Things are a matter of style, and you can have a different style, right? This could be your style, yeah? Maybe this could be your style, yeah? Or perhaps this is your style, yeah? So there are many styles, yeah? And I don't say which style you have to be in, right? I mean, so there could be many valid ways to write it. But keep in mind, yeah? Every stylist has to master the craft. And by the way, never ever use an attributed copyright illustration scrap from the web. Don't do that. Okay, but now let's get serious. This is the overall structure of a typical scientific paper. On the left in orange, you see kind of in a way the headings and numberings, and then on the right you see kind of the detailed explanation. So the paper starts obviously with the title, and then we have an abstract, and then the first section is the introduction, and then you, for example, you might introduce a case study or a running example that is used throughout, but this is optional. You may skip that, yeah? Maybe in a very theoretical paper it is not advisable, it is not appropriate. Then you would typically have something like technical background, preliminaries, definitions, whatever you call it. You provide some context to make the paper self-contained. Self-contained for the kind of readership that you have. Of course, you don't start to explain everything from Adam and Eve. But you have it, make it self-contained for the people that you have in mind reading the paper.
Mirror.
Then you have the first technical contribution, the second, and so on. Yeah, typically arranged in sections, and they somehow have to consecutively follow up with each other. I tell a little bit more on that later. If it's experimental paper or empirical paper, you would have an evaluation section. You would have a related work section. And sometimes the related work section comes right at the beginning after the introduction. That is kind of not totally fixed. Some people prefer it that way, some people prefer it that way. Either way is fine. And you would have a conclusion and future work. And this could be even in long papers, this could even be separate sections again. And then you have the references, okay? And this is the skeleton of a typical scientific paper, okay? And now, where is Aristotle? Aristotle is here. We have it. We have a beginning, we have a middle, and we have an ending. Okay? So, and this is how you can see a scientific paper as being something similar to a story. And now I go through the different parts, through the different constituents of this story. Okay? And I start with the title. And now all the examples on this slide, you will see they are from my very own papers. Okay? So most of them are not good. And that's okay. So this one is one of I'm proud of. It's abstract execution. It's short and concise. And everybody who works in the field of formal methods has already an idea what it could mean. So, but this is ideal, but it's hard to find because, and you should of course use a novel phrase, otherwise it's ambiguous. you have to give sufficient clues to the reader, and well, you can come across a little bit arrogant, but okay, then that's maybe a matter of science. Okay. This one is one of my oops, something happened with the verb here, reverb. Oops. Everything is okay? Okay. This one is an early paper of mine, and I was very proud to have found this very funny word, commodious. Does anybody know what commodious means? I thought so. And I had to look it up as well, but I was young. I was proud of what I know. Yeah. So I just titled "Commodious Axiomatization of Quantifiers in Multiple Value Logic." What the heck? And so it's not a good idea to be super clever, right? I mean, so, and by the way, commodious means something like convenient. This one is not my fault. I wrote it together with two colleagues from the math department, and this is a typical math people title. So it is some remarks on completeness, connection graph, resolution, and link deletion. We can't really decide what we want, but let's just enumerate everything. So I don't think that's great either. This is also here. I had something what they call a delta rule. So first of all, the bad thing is here that maybe people don't know what a delta rule is. Second, the delta gets hashed up in all kinds of funny ways, yeah? And this is, believe me, this is not good at all in times of kind of an automated collation of citations, yeah? So, bad idea, yeah? Beyond ASCII. Yeah, it's catchy, but of course you need a subtitle, otherwise it doesn't mean a thing. It can be a little bit tedious if it's overdone, and then it turned out a lot of other people had the same brilliant idea. So far I counted 26 people and 26 papers and running in DBLP that use same but different in their title. All right, so, but at least now you get some ideas of what you can do and what you can avoid. Now the abstract. What should the abstract do? The purpose of the abstract is very simple. It provides a compact overview of the problem solved by your novel contribution. And there are a lot of pitfalls. Let me give you some. This is the standard. The abstract is the paper. Yeah? The abstract fills the first page. Of course, this is not the point of the abstract. The abstract is really about being compact and being concise. This one is also nice. If you start an abstract, as is generally known, right? I mean, yes, be presumptuous from the start. I mean, the reader will love it, yeah? So, to show that you throw it in his face, yeah? That you know more than him. Again, symbols, yeah? Beyond ASCII, bad idea. Or even worse, citations in the abstract. Of course, the abstract is typically read without the paper at hand, yeah? So, citations don't make any sense in the abstract. And symbols get garbled, because the abstract is kind of sent around and reformatted in all kinds of formats, in HTML and what have you. So, don't use symbols. This is also a thing, yeah? Okay. Our construction works by dancing squiggles. Okay. You expose unintelligible details, yeah? That might be explained in the paper, but they have nothing to do with abstract. Or, we investigate the relation of CTL to ACTL and ECTL. What? Oh, again, yeah? Don't use abbreviations that the reader might not know in the abstract. So, the abstract, that is something to keep in mind. The abstract is used, for example, by program committee members to decide what paper to bid for. And if the abstract is not easy to understand, yeah, and people don't get what you're actually doing in your paper from the abstract, then you have already half lost in the competitive reviewing process, because you will not get the reviewers that are appropriate for your paper. The abstract is also indexed in the search engines, and you want your paper to be found after all, right? So that is another reason to be reasonable with the abstract. let me give you an introduction to the introduction. What is the introduction? What is the difference of the introduction with the abstract? So some people think there is no difference. They just repeat it. And that is of course wrong. The introduction has to do a lot more than the abstract. It has to give the context of the reported research. It has to motivate the work. It has to sketch the method. It has to spell out the main contributions, and for longer papers, it also gives a hint how the rest of the paper is organized. And none of these purposes can possibly be served by the abstract. Of course, you can have a few sentences of the abstract reoccur in the introduction. But in my opinion, it is better to completely rewrite the introduction and separately from the abstract. These are two different pieces of text. They serve two different purposes, and you do not save any time in the end by trying to do copy and paste. After reading the introduction, your reader should have a good idea of why the paper was written, what its contribution is, and whether it's worth to read on. Okay? Whether it's worth to read on. The remaining paper is essentially an exposition and a justification of the claims made in the intro. Yeah? So, it should be, in a way, the intro should already be self-contained. Yeah? And a reader, while we are at it, yeah, make your reader want to continue reading. Yeah? Of course, you want the reader to continue read beyond the introduction. Yeah? And you want to make your reader in particular if the reader is a reviewer. Yeah? You want him or her to read your paper and to read the introduction in the first place. So, you have to achieve this. Yeah, you have to make sure that the introduction is it's really interesting to read. Yeah. Okay. So this is one. Digitalization has now reached those aspects. Okay. I mean, we know all this, right? And so, why do I need to read this again and again? And so, I mean, instead, you should have something written. I mean, look at this, for example. Yeah. On Monday, when I opened the office door, my PhD student Asma saw me and exclaimed, "You look like something the cat dragged in." "Thank you. I hope you had a good weekend too," I replied. Well, okay, this is not serious for the paper, okay? But which one would you like to continue? Yeah? Okay, I'm sure you want to know how this continues.
I'm sorry, but is it too informal for this kind of conversation?
It is a joke.
Ditransform
Don't raise false expectations and don't exaggerate. Okay. So what I mean really is thank you for your interjection. Okay. What I mean is you should not. Of course, this is a joke. I mean, don't do that. Okay. So what you should write instead is you should think of something that is a little bit catchy, yeah? That draws a little bit the attention of the reader, yeah? And avoid platitudes like this, yeah? Avoid platitudes, avoid things that have been said a million times before, yeah?
Transform ada menu transform biasanya.
And this is just to motivate you a little bit that you should really catch the attention of the reader right from the start. Right from the start. So,
bukan flip horizontal.
Yeah. So,
Di flip dulu vertical.
and this is really my main advice here, right? I will tell you about the pitfalls, but the important thing is, I think, reword the introduction many times until it is perfect. So the introduction, in many ways, is the most important part of your paper, because it will decide whether the reviewer is in a positive, expectant mood, yeah, when reading the rest of the paper, and whether the reviewer has already the right expectations, and other readers too. So what I do is I write a first draft of the introduction early in the paper, then before I start, to get me in the mood of how I want to proceed. And then later on, when I had put it away for a few weeks until I finished with the rest,
berarti kameranya di zoom.
and then I read it again and I say, oh, that's fine. I will start again. And then I will rework the introduction, and the second version is much better. And then I let it rest again, and then I look at it again, and I improve it again. So until it is perfect, and it is worth to spend effort on the introduction. Yeah, it's like the visiting card of your paper. So this is my, and now I'm going to introduce a lot of pitfalls for you, several pitfalls. Yeah, I thought already said truisms, right? Programming is a complex task. Surprise, surprise. I mean, you don't need to tell this the reader, yeah? Let this funny thing, yeah? Be a compact widely category. Okay, 2 mistakes in 1 row, yeah? First of all, this is too technical, yeah? For the introduction maybe. And second, you use an arcane font. Almost nobody can know what letter even that is, yeah? The introduction is the paper, yeah? That's a classic mistake, yeah? A 5-page introduction, yeah? And the reader is waiting, whenever will you come to the point? I mean, okay. If the intro has more than 2 pages, shorten and reorganize it. The probability that you have put stuff in the intro that should come later is almost 100%. Forward dependency. In section 4, we will define the central concept of a squabble needed to make sense of what I write now. Very bad, yeah? So, avoid forward references. They have nothing to do in the introduction. Or, an implicit related work section. It's in the introduction, you do not discuss related work at length. You just briefly rehash the state of the art and the context and the direct precursors. You have a separate section for the state of the art. Yeah? The classic to inflate the introduction with an extensive related work discussion. Okay, so these are some of the pitfalls that I have encountered, and I'm sure there are more. Let's now come to the more central parts of the paper writing, the plot. Yeah? Remember Aristotle, the importance of the plot. So, natural language has a wonderful ability. Natural language has kind of a built-in causality. I mean, when we talk to people, when we talk to other people, we automatically talk in such a way. Of course, these words can be perfectly justified, but sometimes they are also warning signs. Even worse, basically. Basically, when I read that in a paper, I know the author is not sure what he's talking about. Yeah? But because I mean, if you're sure you're talking about, and if this is a fact, you don't write basically. Yeah, you just write it down. So it means I don't quite trust myself to say this. Saying things. What?
Aku juga salah nih ternyata. Apa? Gue pas taruh 53 kayaknya anjing. Gue ganti waktu mas.
Alright. Saying things that are not necessary. So another thing. So often we say redundant things by hyperqualification. Okay, hyperqualification means that you use more than one expression to say something that is clear already. Yeah? So there, and I give you some examples. So this is comparisons are typical example of hyperqualification. Yeah? Meaningless comparisons. Our method is able to infer theorems more effectively. More effectively than what? This is a relatively efficient approach. Is it efficient, or is it relative, or what is this? This worked comparatively well. It means nothing at all. And so on and so on. Or the other thing, hatching too much caution. On the whole, the data sample shows a tendency to be not very conclusive. Which means essentially we have just no idea what the data says whatsoever. And it actually would be better if you would write that. More non-redundant redundancy. Two adverbs and the fuzzy message. So the underlying technologies are often changing rapidly. What does it mean exactly? Often, rapidly, often rapidly, rapidly often. Okay. Or this one. Yeah, two is better. An extra precondition can be added. Well, if you add it, it's not extra. If it's extra, then you don't add it. However, for technical definitions, controlled redundancy is your friend. Here is a recipe to write and prepare a good technical definition. 4 steps, 4 easy steps. First step, explain why we need the following technical concept and what its essence is. Second, make sure all auxiliary terminology is defined. Cross-reference it if it has been introduced long ago, yeah? Because the reader will not remember every little squiggle that you introduced 10 pages ago. Then state a numbered technical definition, and then illustrate it with an example, or do it the other way around, that is fine too. First introduce an example, illustrate it with an example, and then do the technical definition. Both can be okay. So, in this case, of course, you have redundancy, yeah? I mean, because in a way, at least number 1, 3, and 4 are redundant versions of each other, yeah? But they're good, because for a complex technical definition, the reader will not grasp in one go, yeah? And therefore, any kind of help is useful. Let us come now to a bit more the structural part, organization and structure. So now I give you some more things to absolutely avoid. This is, for example, the monster section, as I call it, yeah? This is what I often see. The monster section, yeah, kind of proliferates, and it occupies, say, 8 pages in your paper, yeah? Yeah? And it's kind of, I mean, it will never end. And as a poor reviewer, I say, okay, whenever will I come to the end of this section? I mean, it goes on and on and on, yeah? You just feel like at the bottom of the mountain, where is it? Okay. So, moreover, very long sections are hard, it's hard to see the overall structure of the argument. And moreover, it's difficult to navigate and find things and cross-reference, yeah? So you have to make sure that you structure your text enough. And if you have a long section, you need subsections. So, no unit, as a rule of thumb, yeah? No unit, subsection, section, and so on, should be longer than 2 pages of unstructured text. If it's more than 2 pages, think about putting in additional structures like a subsection. A related topic, how long should be one paragraph? Look at this beauty that I found somewhere. Isn't it great? I mean, wouldn't you like to read that? Yeah? It's wonderful, isn't it? I mean, already looking at it makes your eyes close. So it's, how long is one paragraph? Of course, there is no fixed rule, yeah? But in my opinion, it should not be longer than 1/3 of a page or a column, yeah? And another thing is also a paragraph, so to say, a paragraph structures essentially one thought or one concept or one argument. So you don't discuss more than one topic per paragraph. If there is another topic, you start a new paragraph. It's as simple as that. This is a etching from an illustrated book of Charles Dickens. You know Charles Dickens, famous author, and he wrote about orphans. Yeah, I mean the orphans. They were poor orphans. These poor orphans, and they had to work in a, they had to do hard labor, and they were treated badly, and so on. Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's so sad. Yeah, so think about these poor orphans. And what is an orphan? I mean, why I'm talking about orphans? So, in typesetting, an orphan is a word that appears alone on the top of a page and belongs to the previous page. Yeah? So, and there is also a corresponding notion, a widow. A widow is the opposite. It's a word that appears at the bottom of a page, yeah? Or one or two words, and then continues on the next page. So, and so these are called widows and orphans, and they are ugly to read, yeah? So just avoid them. Typesetting systems like LaTeX normally avoid it, but Word does not. So you have to be a bit careful if you use Word. And a related thing is this can also happen on the level of sections, yeah? And I have just seen a few days ago, right here in this building, I've seen an example of this. I think the person knows what it is. The orphan subsection, section heading, several pages of text, and then comes the subsection 3.1, which is tiny, tiny, tiny at the end, and no subsection 3.2. Yeah? The orphan subsection. So, of course, something went terribly wrong, yeah, with the sectioning here. Yeah, should have probably thought of structuring the text before. Yeah, or maybe this was not needed. Yeah, anyway, think about it. So, whenever you do something like this, please think of these poor orphans described in Charles Dickens' novels, yeah, and how bad they had it, and avoid orphans. Related thing, hidden stuff. Okay, hidden stuff. Why I put here a magician? You see the magician, and he draws rabbits out of his top hat. Yeah, that's what magicians do. Yeah, and sometimes I see that in papers too. Yeah, something is hidden, and you have to pull it out in order to see it. For example, hidden definitions in footnotes. Yeah, so never hide technical definitions in a text block, or even worse, in a footnote. It's so easy to forget or to overlook, and it's hard to find. So don't hide important things. Yeah? What to put in a footnote, by the way? What to put in a footnote? Well, in a footnote, you put a side remark, yeah? Or an explanation that is not essential to appreciate the paper, but would obstruct the flow of reading. Yeah? And then the reader is free to read it or not read it, but he will not miss something absolutely essential. You could put a URL in a footnote. Or in the humanities, not in computer science, but humanities, they have funny citation regulations, so they put citations in the footnotes. Okay, so never ever, however, put essential information in a footnote, like a definition, abbreviation, or an explanation that matters. Okay, fine. Look, what is this? My God, the rabbits came out of the hat, finally. Okay, well, but aren't they cute? Yeah? This is what the internet is for, right? Cute rabbit pictures. Okay, but now, hush, rabbits. Hush, go back to the top hat. Yes. Yes. Respectively. Who knows what respectively means and how it is used? According to the papers I read, everybody knows. According to what I read, few people know. Here is a typical usage. Again, by my PhD student Eduard, and I cite him because he's a brilliant mind, but he's a flawed writer. So it's a nice combination, so it's a lot of good examples for this. A heap, rest, local state, is symbolic if it maps some field rest variable to a symbolic expression. Well, this is not the correct usage. It's not the correct usage of respective. What does respectively not mean? It does not mean the same as or. Yeah? What it means instead is in the order given. So you can write the stack and the heap hold local and global variables, comma, respectively. Yeah? This is the way to use respectively. And if you do not know how to use respectively, then just don't use it. It's simple to avoid it. So you can always think, okay, it's correctly used if I can replace it with in the order given. Then you use it correctly. What does this mean? Avoid abbreviations. Abbreviations add cognitive burden to the reader. Yeah? They are ugly and they save little space in the end. So, of course, sometimes they're okay, but in general, you should avoid abbreviations. For example, e.g., i.e., sh, ia, and so on and so on. Yeah, I mean, it's better just to write it out. Yeah, it's much easier to read. Some abbreviations are misleading even. Like I see so often, I see CF dot, and people think it means C. Yeah, it does not mean C, not at all. It means compared to. And compared to something similar but essentially different. Yeah? Yeah? And that is because it stands for, it comes from Latin, like many of these other things also, and it stands for confer. Yeah? So, and that means compare. Okay. Well, that is one thing. ETC can be acceptable. Et al. In connection with the citation is useful. SSSL. This is if you want to tell your reader that you know more than him. Yeah, you're good at Latin and so. Yeah, astere ad asta, alia iacta sunt, SSSL. Yeah. Avoid it. If and only if in a mathematical paper, quite common. But don't put a full stop behind it. It's confusing because you think the sentence S ends with if, with F1, F too many. Clearly defined abbreviations for very frequent technical terms are of course okay. And very common abbreviations also like GUI or CPU or RAM and so on. Yeah, we don't need to get rid of them. I come now slowly to the later parts of the paper. I come to the evaluation section. And here, what we do here, the evaluation section, well, about the evaluation section I could give a whole talk in its own, yeah, because this is really a much bigger topic. Here I can only give you a few hints. So you should formulate, first of all, research questions that are answered in this section. Because, I mean, if the reader does not know what's the point of your evaluation, then it is very difficult to judge it. Yeah? So you should say, okay, which kind of a question would we like to answer with our evaluation? And now, the thing is that evaluation has actually a lot of possible dimensions. That evaluation can be qualitative, it could be quantitative, it could be a user study. And then you have, if it's qualitative, then you're discussing applicability or suitability. You could discuss it with a case study that is synthetic, it's a community say study, it's industrial or real world. Quantitative can be about performance, about efficiency, about scalability. Typically you use benchmarks. Again, this could be synthetic, they could be community benchmarks, they could be taken from real world problems or from industrial problems. You could do a user study where you look at usability and effectivity. And it's super difficult to define good user studies. I mean, there's definitely a separate lecture required and there are good books about it. You could formulate questionnaires, interviews, or compare the performance. That is the most difficult of all, to compare the performance of two different groups using two different tools to kind of judge them. It's very tedious and very difficult to do in practice. What is important in the evaluation section is, first, you need always to relate to previous achievements. Yeah? So, because, I mean, it usually does not stand on its own unless you are the very first who solves a problem at all and there is absolutely no previous work. But otherwise, people want to know how this compares to what others can do. Second, nowadays, threats to validity analysis is expected in empirical evaluation. What does this mean? This means you have to discuss what are the possible limitations. For example, you could say, possibly my data could be biased in a certain way. But actually they are not, because I took care of it in this and this manner. So, and there are, of course, a lot of things to discuss here. I cannot really go into details. As I said, I mean, one could do not even a lecture, one could, I would say, a small course, with 2 or 3 lectures, just on doing evaluations and different ways to do it. It's one of the classical underestimated topics by computer scientists. I mean, and I'm, so to say, not alone here. It's kind of, I mean, natural scientists, of course, have the importance of evaluations on their radar much longer, and they are, in the meantime, much stricter also with it. So I think this is something where we computer scientists still need to learn a little bit and be perhaps a little bit more thorough, and in particular to plan the evaluation part of our research from the start. Because if you do it in hindsight, then it becomes exceedingly difficult to do it. Okay, now I have just to refresh us a little bit from this serious and weighty topic of evaluation. I have some assorted tidbits for you, okay? So the first is, I don't know whether this applies to you here in Indonesia, actual. But in Germany, there is a word called aktuell. And many Germans think that actual means the same, namely current. And this is not the case, of course. So actual is not current. Or must not. Many people think must not means it's not needed. But actually, must not in English simply means you're not allowed to. But I see it confused quite often. Or now we carry out. Now we carry out. This is all. I mean, there's in a way nothing wrong with this phrase, but I just don't like it. I mean, obviously, I think now we carry out the secret plan. Okay, so just remember whenever you see this, whenever you see this phrase, now we carry out the secret plan, and you will laugh and just strike it out. Special. Special is not a good word to use in a scientific paper. It has too many connotations, and actually, person with special needs, right? So in what you usually want to use is something like reserved or dedicated or separate or specific. I mean, these are much better known. Note that. I mean, this is I read that so often, and I said I kind of yes, admonish the reader. They love it. Everybody loves to be admonished, isn't it? So no, you should not do that. You should be polite, of course, to the reader. And note that it's not really polite. I don't think so. This is my best, to some extent. You know what's wrong here? Come on, don't disappoint me. What's wrong? The D. Yes, the D should be the T, right? Yes? Yeah. And you know who this is? It's John Cleese. Okay, John Cleese. Okay. So, and you can look up the sketch that John Cleese plays here. When he does this gesture, it's a Kilimanjaro expedition, a double Kilimanjaro to the twin peaks of Kilimanjaro. Yes. Conditions. If, whether, when. Also an interesting topic. So many times I see if when actually when or whether is meant. We want to check if the parallel code manages to do something. It's wrong. You have to write. We want to check whether the parallel code manages to do something. If expresses a condition under which something happens. For example, if you write clearly, then I can understand your intention. If you ask nicely, then I will give you a cookie. It is simply unsuitable to express a temporal or a factual information. Tense. And now, finally, good news for native Bahasa speakers. Because in Bahasa you don't have a complex time structure for the verbs, yeah? And therefore it is sometimes difficult to express complex temporal relationships like in languages like English and French. And now the good news is, like a drama, a scientific paper is written in the present tense. Yeah? Why is this so? Well, facts, theorems, algorithms, they stay valid throughout the paper. Yeah? They don't go on and off. Yeah? So you just say in the present tense. It's so simple. And you use the past tense to refer only to a specific event. Yeah? In 1871, Ade Surat and his colleagues proved something. Okay. Use future tense only in the future work section. How long has this been going on? This is a title of a famous record by Sarah Vaughan, one of the finest jazz singers history ever knew, and it's a great record. But actually what I want to illustrate here is the correct usage of the perfect tense. Yeah? So normally you don't need the perfect tense, yeah, in a paper. But for example, my dear colleagues Richard Bubel and Stefan Dillmann, they have been verifying a tool called ePlan, and they have been at it forever. Aren't they ready yet? It seems not. So if something has begun in the past and is still continuing, then the perfect tense is appropriate. But in a paper, actually, it's rare that you need to write this. Que sera, sera. We all know, right? What will be, will be. Future tense, Doris Day. In section 3, we will introduce squiggles. I don't like this. In fact, we introduced them already in 1971, and section 3 has been already written. So why do you need the future tense here? Yeah? It's not something, it's not a prediction, yeah? It's something that is just there, right? I mean, so I think you just write the present tense. In section 3, we introduce squiggles. Enough. Citations. Citations. Here somebody tries to attempt to cite our famous key system. Key system is, if you don't know it, it's arguably the best deductive verification system for the Java language in the world. And we are part of a very proud team who created it. So somebody luckily cites it here, and now it's they use this numbered format, yeah, for citation. And now let's go through which citations are correct. Yeah? So, what about the first one, the key system? Wrong. Yeah. The next one. Wrong. Yes. Yes, exactly. What about the third one? Wrong again. Yes. You don't use a citation as a subject of a sentence. Yeah. Yeah? It's just nonsense. Yeah. I mean, to replace the subject of a sentence with a citation. Even more wrong. Okay. What about this one? Yeah, good. Okay. What about this one? Wrong. You should have pull it together with a comma. This one, wrong, because it's in the middle of the phrase. And this one is okay. Yeah? Okay. So I think now you get the hang of it, right? It's easy to get it right, yeah? But it's also easy to get it wrong. References, yeah? It's of course a natural thing, yeah? Now, citations to references. A citation, then you refer to a reference. So, what is a reference? A reference is a pointer to a text or word crediting a result or a tool in support of an argument. It's as simple as that. What are the requirements? Well, you want it to be accurate. It means that it supports the point in question, not something else, and not something more general, and also not something more specific. It should be correct. my name has this unfortunate diacritical character, and I see garbled like this, yeah? And honestly, I find it a bit disrespectful, yeah? If somebody is not able to spell my name, how can they prove a theorem? I mean, it's so much easier, right? To spell a name correctly than proving a theorem. So, I mean, it shows, I mean, either you are sloppy or disrespectful or dumb. I mean, no possibility is really good. It must be informative. The reader must be able to find the source easily. A URL, I repeat, a URL is not a reference. Yeah? URLs get easily broken, and moreover, they don't give you the required context. So, what you need to have at least is an author or authors, conference or journal title, editors, volume, pages, publisher, year. Okay? And an URL, if you just have a URL to a web page, it's better to use a footnote, not a reference. If you want to use URLs in addition to bibliographic information, then use a DOI, document object identifier, because they are more robust than URLs. Also, references should be succinct. You should make one reference per distinct point, per distinct argument, except when listing many examples. Like if you want to say, okay, examples of systems that do the following are, and then there can be a long list, yeah? But it's not a good style, you know, to have a long list of things for every little point. You should be to the point. And also, again, no orphans. All items that appear in the references section should actually be cited somewhere in the paper. Again, this is something that LaTeX does automatically for you, but inferior tools like Word do not, yeah? And you'd have to do it by hand. So, therefore, you have to take care of it. And of course, well, we are all very proud of our work, right? But believe me, I mean, when, as a reviewer, yeah, you see the most obscure paper of an author, yeah, self-cited, yeah, and there is a long list, yeah, of 10 or 15 self-citations, but 3 or 4 of the important works in that area are missing, then you're in bad shape, believe me. So, therefore, I mean, of course you can cite your own work, in particular the work that leads up to what you're currently doing. You should cite it, you must cite it, but you should avoid excessive self-citation, yeah? I mean, you do not need to cite all the workshop papers maybe that are necessary also. Okay, typos. Typos. Well, again, this is about being respectful to the reader, yeah? If you have a lot of typos, the reader gets the impression that the author is being dumb and careless. And even if it is not the case, but it conveys you as this kind of person, yeah? And it's very easy actually to get rid of it. So a sloppy text really is disrespectful to the reader. And now, of course, I think these days it is easy to get rid of spelling errors, yeah? And it is even easy to get rid of some grammatical errors because we have even some good grammar correction. But if you're insecure, I mean, I can understand, for example, in Bahasa is a language that lacks some of the constructs that Western languages lack, English, and often I see Indonesian writers to be very insecure about plural, about articles and pronouns and so on, yes, and so on, and I understand this, yeah. So in this case, just employ somebody, I mean ask somebody who knows good English to go over the paper, or even maybe shell out a few rupiahs for a professional reading service, and it's not that expensive, and it can make a big difference actually. Of course, there is also a funny side to errors. So this, for example, is a very nice parking lot. Yeah, there is no end to things on the planet. Yeah. Okay. The conclusion. We are at the conclusion of the paper and almost at the conclusion of my talk. I hope you enjoyed it so far. So this is what I say often. I don't have any idea what to say, so I'll just repeat some random sentences from the intro. It's like building a railway like this. Yeah? Your paper goes nowhere. You have put all this precious effort, yeah? And you have proved a lot of interesting things, and you have made nice tools, and you explained them, and so on. And now it just goes nowhere. It's a missed chance. Yeah? You can do so many things in a conclusion. You can frame your work in a bigger context. You can emphasize its novel aspects. You can explain the potential of your results. Tell the reader again which gap you managed to close, which new opportunities arise now because of your research. Does the view on the research area change because of your results? Or could you relate hitherto independent approaches? Are there practical implications and achievements? Does it change the world? Does it make the world better? Explore the amazing future developments that are possible. So these are some of the things that you can do in a conclusion, and it's very well worth to write a few sentences about it. So don't leave it dangling in the air like this. And this comes now, come to the end, yeah? The take-home message, okay? Yeah, and you don't need to do it like that, okay? You can just. I can give the slides to Adi and maybe you can distribute it to interested people. So yeah, the take-home message. Okay. I just repeat myself now. A paper should tell a good story. Yeah. So ask yourself, what is the overall storyline in 3 sentences? It's a good practice. Yeah. Take your colleague, your friend, somebody who is sympathetic, and explain to him or her your paper in 1 minute. Can you do it? If you can't do it, then maybe something is wrong. If you can't explain your paper to a colleague in 1 minute, in roughly at least, yeah, what you're doing, then think about it. I mean, maybe you don't have the storyline right. Is your paper worthwhile and fun to read is also another question to ask. Is its structure clear? Is the development logical? Is it economically written? And most of all, in this series, yeah, would I like to read the follow-up to the paper that I have just been reading? So try to be critical to yourself and ask yourself these questions and write your paper so that you can answer all these questions with yes. And that brings me to the end. Here is a final message from Samuel Beckett. And he kind of encourages us to fail again, but at least fail better. And that is the end of my talk. Thank you very much for listening. I really enjoyed this.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Hähnle, for the, I suppose, very excellent and encouraging talk. I would like to open the floor for the questions. We have a few minutes for questions. First, let me give an opportunity for questions from the ones who are here on site. Do you have any questions? Anybody here?
Yes.
Okay, Alex, go ahead.
About the titles, the title of your lecture. You mentioned some of the type of the papers you publish. They are all published, right?
Yes.
Even with the ASCII.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Joe.
Yes. They're all published.
So is that a do's or don'ts?
So the first was a do, and the rest are don'ts. The first was a do because that was a title I liked very much. It was a two-word title. It's compact, it's informative, and it's elegant. And the others are all don'ts.
So is it okay to be funny with that?
It's okay to be a little bit funny, and I think you just shouldn't overdo it, because so I know some papers, some people, for some reason, many of them work in functional programming, they like to come up with funny paper titles. And I think some guy started it originally, and then a lot of people copied him. And this is kind of the first few times it was funny, and then in the meantime it gets a bit tedious, yeah? Because everybody has to somehow do something pseudo-funny. And moreover, I mean, if you might not find something that is genuinely funny and informative at the same time, yeah? And then if you fail to do that, it's better to be dry and informative, you know.
It's better to be dry, but informative.
Yes.
And informative.
Then funny and not appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Alex. So, another question from the room? Please, yes.
Thank you for the nice presentation. I have a question on abstract. Still, I don't understand. You say in abstract we can explain about purpose. So is it only the purpose? And if I explain the purpose of abstract, I don't
The what?
in abstract.
Yeah, yes.
Papers, you mean?
Yeah,
Papers,
the
yeah.
purpose of my design.
Yeah.
I explain the purpose.
Oh, the purpose.
Purpose.
Oh, yeah, purpose.
Do I not need to repeat again in production?
So, in the abstract, I mean, in the abstract, you kind of sketch. You sketch in a way the main reason why the paper is there. Yeah, I mean, you say, okay, what is the problem you solved, and you can maybe say, and we use just one or two sentences. Yeah, we use this and this method to do it. Yeah, but in the introduction, you go deeper. Yeah. So in the introduction, in addition you have to give also a glimpse of the method. Yeah, and you have to also relate it a little bit to to the context. Yeah, I mean to what has happened before. Yeah. So maybe if you read again my slides, it will become much clearer. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let me give an opportunity for one, two. Okay, yes. Okay, there's a question on the use of sufficient capitalism.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a more practical way to solve this, or do you think? How do you deal with the?
Well, you know, I tell you, if I could start my research career over, yeah, I would take a pen name, and I already know it would be Aaron Artwork. It fulfills three requirements. The first is it has no diacritical characters. It starts with two A's, and it is unique. So seriously, I felt basically that once I finish the paper, I write my name correctly. I write it as my birth name in my passport, namely the A with two dots, and then the thing is taken out of my hands. And I felt usually there's nothing I can do about it. So yeah, it's like that. I just have to live with it. Yeah. So well, my advice is that maybe if you're in the beginning of your career and you have not yet written your first paper, and you have an unfortunate name like me, then maybe just use the ASCII version of your name for scientific purposes. It will spare you a lot of trouble.
All right. Do we have a question on YouTube channel? So, okay. Now that let me open the podium for anybody else who wants to ask questions. Anybody? You still have a few minutes. No? So then I have a question again. So your tips, I would say, are organized for a paper in which you presented. There is a technical result. And
that's true. That's true.
Now, I wonder what's your view on survey papers?
Right. Of course, survey papers are a bit of a special category. Yeah. but I think they still share some important characteristics with the kind of paper I discuss here. They definitely should also have a beginning and a middle and an end, even if it's a survey paper. And I think many of the tips also apply, like you should have a coherent linguistic flow, yeah? And kind of all the things about sectioning and structuring and so on, they still apply, yeah? So I would say 90% of what I said here applies to survey papers as well. Of course, what is a bit different in survey papers is the structure that I gave in the beginning, the skeleton, right? Because in a survey paper, you don't have technical results, yeah, typically, but you organize it maybe according to kind of areas of contribution or something like that. So you could say, I mean, you could also say like a survey paper is a little bit like a paper that has a hugely inflated related work section and no technical contribution section. So and that also gives you kind of this view gives you a little bit the idea which parts are still relevant for a survey paper and which not.
Okay. Anybody? So one more questions. No? Okay, so
I think he had one.
I'm just curious, would there be a copy of the slide?
Oh, okay.
Recording available later?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Yes. Yeah. Can do that,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
So that's not a question then. Okay, so then I ask a question on. I guess this is something that, because you mentioned a few times using latex there. So what's your suggestion or maybe view on this for the students? I suppose.
For the students. So, well, I mean, I think that LaTeX is a typesetting system that has been designed with a kind of with writing scientific papers in mind. Yeah, Word has been designed as a system for ordinary text. I mean, like letters and or maybe kind of essays or something like that. Yeah, and so to write scientific papers with Word is tedious. Yeah, you have a low learning curve. I mean, it's less steep, but in the end, you do a lot of extra work, in particular for longer text. I mean, so if you have ever tried to write a 200-page document with a lot of cross-references in Word, becomes very, very tedious, and then to manage hundreds of references. So I think what is easily possible. There is a collaborative tool called Overleaf, which is free for individual use, and it gives you kind of a similar experience as Word, so you can start writing immediately, but it produces the LaTeX source at the same time. It is good for beginners, and it's also a great tool to learn LaTeX, because you can type something in the Visivic editor and see how the corresponding tag edit looks like. So I would say do yourself a favor and learn how to use LaTeX. In particular, if you're looking at maybe at a scientific or teaching career, because in the long run it will save you a lot of work actually. So that is my recommendation. In particular, if you work in a more technical area, I mean, if you have to do with formulas of any kind or tables or algorithms and so on. Yeah. So that is my advice.
All right. So we have one final question in the Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess this is a personal question. What inspires you to write?
Share my knowledge.
It's a good question.
Yes.
And session today.
Yes, maybe. It's also a very difficult question to answer. I mean, because like, I mean, I guess I have a bit of a teacher's genes in my body because my father was a teacher, and so he was an elementary school teacher, but still he was a good teacher, and I got inspired by him, I think, to a certain extent, to like teaching. And I started teaching already while at university. When I was 21, I became a TA in calculus. I think, and then to be a bit more philosophical, I mean, say what inspires me to give away or to kind of share my knowledge. So I think, I mean, we're all finite, we humans, yeah. We will die one day or another, right? And even our children will die. So what can we do? I mean, the only thing that kind of stays is that if we convey some of the things that we learn to others, right? So they can pass on the flame, and therefore I think doing this is one of the most worthwhile things actually that I can think of, and to what inspires me to write, I think is simply the fun to do research, to go where no man has ever gone before. And that is just fun, so I like to do it. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Hähnle, for the answers. Not the questions. And with that, we come to the end of the session. Maybe you want to turn on the...
Wait, just switch it off.
Yeah, so we come to the end of the session, and thank you everybody who participated in the session with the questions, with the attention. Also for those attending in Zoom. And this is actually our first talk for a while in the after pandemic, so offline, I should say, with offline session. And with that, let me conclude and thank you all, and I'll see you everybody in the next opportunity for maybe the next talk. Bye bye.